Today, I want to talk about the connection between the HPA axis, your stress response system, and the HPT axis, your thyroid signaling system. I'm Whitney Morgan, thyroid coach and functional medicine practitioner. These systems are often discussed separately, but in real human physiology, they are deeply interconnected. When we assess or treat one in isolation, we often miss critical context. And that's where confusion, stalled progress, and inconsistent results tend to show up. So today, I want to zoom out and look at the whole system because that's where clarity actually lives. The HPA axis is your body's primary stress response system. When the brain perceives stress, whether physical, chemical, emotional, or inflammatory, the hypothalamus releases corticotropin releasing hormone, or CRH. CRH then signals the pituitary to release adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH, which then tells the adrenal glands to produce cortisol. Cortisol is not a bad hormone. It's essential for survival. It helps raise blood sugar, mobilize fuel, modulate inflammation, and respond appropriately to short-term stress. The problem isn't cortisol itself. The problem is duration. This system was never designed to be turned on all day, every day. When stress becomes chronic, the HPA axis doesn't just affect cortisol, it sends ripple effects throughout nearly every physiological system. Blood sugar becomes harder to regulate, immune signaling is impaired, gut integrity suffers, detox pathways slow down, muscle and connective tissue break down more easily. Over time, these downstream consequences just don't reflect stress. They become stressors themselves, reinforcing HPA axis dysfunction in a self-perpetuating loop. This is why chronic stress rarely presents as just stress. It shows up as a multi-system dysfunction. This is one of the most important concepts to understand. Chronic stress is bidirectional. Stress disrupts physiology, but once physiology is disrupted, the body experiences that dysfunction as ongoing stress. This is how people get stuck. So even when external life stress improves, the internal stress signal doesn't automatically shut off because the systems themselves are now dysregulated. Now, the thyroid doesn't operate independently. It's part of its own signaling loop called the HPT axis. The hypothalamus releases thyrotropin releasing hormone, or TRH. The pituitary responds by releasing thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH. And then the thyroid produces thyroxine, known as T4, and triiodothyronine, known as T3. An important distinction here, though, roughly 90% of thyroid hormone production is T4. Only about 10% is T3. T4 must be converted into T3 before it can enter the cells and drive metabolism. This system relies heavily on adequate energy availability, proper enzyme function, and critically, a nervous system that perceives safety. When the HPA axis is chronically activated, it directly interferes with thyroid signaling. Elevated CRH and cortisol suppress TSH output from the pituitary. Cortisol also interferes with the conversion of T4 into active T3 while increasing the production of reverse T3, which is a metabolically inactive form of T3. You can think of T3 as the gas pedal and reverse T3 as the brake pedal. At the cellular level, cortisol reduces thyroid receptor sensitivity. This is not a mistake, it's a protective mechanism. The body is essentially saying, this is not a safe time to burn fuel. The HPA and HPT axes function in parallel, and they're in constant communication. Chronic stress suppresses thyroid signaling, while impaired thyroid function slows cortisol clearance, placing additional strain on the adrenals. This is how a vicious cycle develops. And once that cycle is established, it becomes very difficult to identify which is the primary driver unless you assess both systems together. Now, from a functional perspective, there's a clear hierarchy of intervention. We want to stabilize the stress response first. Then we address thyroid signaling. Only after that do we ever move into sex hormone optimization. Trying to optimize thyroid or sex hormones on top of unresolved HPA axis dysfunction often leads to poor tolerance, inconsistent results, or even worsening symptoms. You can't build metabolic resilience on a foundation that doesn't feel safe. When practitioners test only one system, they can create blind spots. Thyroid labs can look normal while cortisol patterns are driving symptoms. Adrenal testing can reveal stress patterns without explaining why metabolism remains suppressed. This leads to unanswered questions, trial and error interventions, and frustration for both the client and the practitioner. This is why I assess both systems together whenever possible. For the HPA axis, I prefer the Dutch Complete or the Dutch Plus, which allows me to evaluate the cortisol rhythm, the total output, free circulating levels, the metabolites, DHEA, and also sex hormone balance. For thyroid function, I use a comprehensive blood panel that evaluates not just TSH, but hormone production, including T4, T3, reverse T3, conversion, immune activity, and transport. Together, these labs tell a far more cohesive physiological story than either system could tell on its own. When we understand how stress physiology and thyroid signaling interact, the picture becomes much clearer. Better data leads to better strategy and ultimately better outcomes. This is why I don't view adrenal and thyroid health as separate conversations. They're part of the same physiological story. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you're leaving with a better understanding of how the adrenal and thyroid systems influence one another. If this video was helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you want to go deeper with thyroid education, gluten-free recipes, and functional medicine insights delivered straight to your inbox, make sure you're subscribed to my newsletter. Just click on the link in the video notes below. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care.